Hey everyone, I wanted to take a little bit of time and record some videos for you that might help support you in addition to the lessons and the material that we cover when we're all together in class. And so in this first video, I'm actually going to just talk a little bit about something which seems probably super basic, but sometimes can actually create some interesting situations for us when we're trying to work with tarot, and that is about shuffling. So again, you might be thinking, like, why do we need to spend any time talking about shuffling? It's a pretty basic skill. But there are going to be occasions where different techniques or different methods of shuffling are going to be pretty helpful for you. And I actually have a story in that regard. So several months ago, actually probably about 6 months ago now, I got something stuck in my thumb. It ended up being a sliver of glass. And it was kind of running down the side of my thumb, and it made shuffling the way I prefer to do, which is the bridge method. Might be kind of difficult to see here, but let's see if we can do that, right? So that bridge method, then when you push it up between your hands, see if I can show you that again. I might need to work with my video setup to make sure that we can do this in a different way so you can see the card. But see, like that, that's that bridge method. And that's my preferred way of shuffling, as it is. I know for a lot of people, especially if you play cards, like poker or hearts or pinochle or anything like that. But when I had this injury to my thumb, it made it very, very painful and very difficult to shuffle that way. So I had to find alternate ways to go about doing it to make sure that my cards were well shuffled and well randomized for doing readings. So I'm just going to walk you through a couple of different ways to shuffle and why they might be helpful, or in some situations may not be as helpful, depending on what your needs are. So probably the most common method for shuffling is the overhand method. So just like this, right? Very easy. A lot of people like to shuffle that way. One of the benefits of it is that it's very friendly to your hands, right? So if you're like me in that situation where I had that shard of glass stuck in my thumb, or if you have arthritis in your hands, and so overhand shuffling or working with larger decks can be kind of painful, this form of shuffling can really be very friendly to your hands. And it was something that I kind of leaned into while I was waiting for the surgery to have the glass removed. One of the big drawbacks with shuffling this way, though, is that it's not a great way to randomize your cards. So if you actually watch me do it, you can kind of see that the cards tend to move in clumps, right? And so if you've done a reading with the deck and you're trying to shuffle and get it ready to do a new reading, the cards are going to kind of continue to move in those clusters or those clumps, and you won't get that randomization that you really want when you're working with a deck before you start a reading. So for that reason, because randomization is so important, one of the reasons I really like the bridge method is that it is great for actually getting cards to randomize. So again, you'll get the deck. There we go. Sorry, I've got that filter on in the background, but you get the deck kind of split in half, and then you put your index fingers kind of on the top, and then you will bring them down like that and bridge. You do have to have a fair bit of strength in your hands to do that. It will be accessible to a lot of folks to do it that way. But again, if you have a shard of glass in your thumb, if you have arthritis or have any other kind of hand issue or injury, this can be a more challenging way of approaching shuffling, but it is fantastic for getting your cards randomized. And it can actually, another reason why I like this method is that if you are working with a new deck, right, and especially if the card stock is kind of thick, these cards are very thin, they're not terribly thick, so they actually shuffle and bend pretty easily. But if you are working with a new deck where the cardstock is a little bit thicker, it's a little bit heavier, it will be a little bit tough to break those in at first using this bridge method. But it's also one of the best ways to break in a deck and kind of loosen up that heavy cardstock and make the cards a little bit more flexible. The more you work with your cards, regardless of how you shuffle them, the more that you work with them, the more that you handle them, the cardstock will tend to open up a little bit. It will tend to become a little bit more flexible, and you will find that it eventually gets there for you. Another potential drawback, so I'm kind of trying to share both benefits and some drawbacks with each of these methods. One of the other drawbacks with this method is if you are working with a larger deck. So a good example of this is I have an Oracle deck that's a universe deck, and the cards are probably 3.5 by 5 or 6 inches. They are good sized cards, and even though my hands are pretty big, I have some issues shuffling with that deck in this format. And so there are other ways to kind of adjust that. You can do it from the side. And so again, same kind of principle. You divide the deck in half, but here you actually put your thumbs on the side and then bring it down that way, and you can shuffle it that way. That works. It's a great modification if you still want to bridge, but are working with a larger deck where it's hard to get your hands around the edges of the cards this way. So one final method that I'd like to share with you, and one that I ended up using quite a bit while I was recovering from thumb surgery, when I was finally able to get that shard of glass removed, and really had a lot of tenderness as it was healing for about a month or two. So this ended up being a great way that I was using to both get that randomization, which we really want with our decks, but was a little bit friendlier. And so one thing that you can always do, and one of the reasons why I really like this method is that it is helpful for when you have a brand new deck and everything is in order, it gets it randomized super quickly. And that is to basically cut the deck, take a card, put it down, and do it again. Cut the deck in a different place, take a card, put it down. Cut the deck in a different place, take the card, put it down. I tend to make 10 or 11 piles doing that, and then just continue that process, stacking up the piles until all 78 cards are worked through. It's a fantastic way to ensure randomization, and unlike bridging, it doesn't tax your hands in any noticeable way to do that. All you have to do is hold the deck and cut it, and then lay cards down. As I mentioned, when you're working with a brand new deck, you're going to have all of the cards in order, right? So the major arcana, 0 through 21, those first 22 cards are going to be in sequence, in order. And then all of the minor arcana, so your cups, your wands, your swords, your pentacles, all of those are going to be in order from 1 to 10, and then the court cards, page, knight, queen, king, in each suit. And the suits will follow from each other. Tarot decks tend to do that in a pretty standardized way. So one of the things that can be very challenging when you're getting a brand new deck and breaking it in is to get 78 cards, which are all organized sequentially, into a really randomized pile. I love this approach for just, again, cut the deck, grab a card, cut it in a different place, grab a card. By the time you do that, it only takes a few minutes. You'll have an incredibly randomized deck, and that you can still integrate if you like other methods with that. So after you do that, you can bridge a couple of times if you want some practice doing that, or move to an overhand method. When I'm reading for myself, or if I'm reading for other people, that's actually one of the things that, one of the approaches for shuffling that I most typically do. I'll randomize the deck that way by making the piles, and then we'll go to an overhand method, just kind of meditating on the question or the issue and allowing the cards to kind of come out as they will. So again, just a very quick overview on some different ways to shuffle. And again, depending on whether you're working with a new deck, a large deck, if you're wrestling with hand issues like I was for several months, or for other reasons, hopefully one or more of these will help you. Take care, and we'll talk again soon.